Hi, everybody. I see that there are 20 people here. I wish I could see you, but I knew you there. And so glad that you could join us today. I think you, like me, are probably really looking forward to hearing from our presenter today, Professor Jose Luis Jimenez from Andrés Bello University in Venezuela. He's got a lot to share with us today, and so without further ado, Andres, in addition to being a faculty member in the School of Journalism, he is also the COIL coordinator, Collaborative Online International Learning for Andrés Bello University, and he has some wonderful work to share with us today. So without further ado, Jose Luis, the floor is yours.
Yes, good morning, good evening, good afternoon for everybody. It's a great pleasure to be with you today. And I want to share research that I have been developing since 2015 about the situation in Venezuela and about a generation of students who have been born under a dictatorship that we are living in our country with a lot of pressure and a lot of violence. So I'm going to be talking about violence. I'm going to be talking about how to foster love, how to make a switch from violence to love, switch of consciousness. So I'm going to be start sharing my screen. Okay.
There we
Okay.
are. Yep.
There we go.
Perfect.
So this is going to be the presentation, Healing a Generation. This is an assessment and implementation of higher education curricula, specifically for journalism students living under structural violence to promote democracy values and environmental awareness in Venezuela. And this is the starting point. The starting point, I'm starting with Martin Luther King Jr. With this very important quote, a very elemental quote. I mean, we are talking about changing the drastic situations that we are living in our planet of poverty, hunger, equality, climate change. And I think that what he thought at that time, switching consciousness from the darkness to love. I think that this is the most powerful quote that we can see. How was human being born under all the pressure, born under all kind of discrimination, could have come with the idea that hating more was not the solution. And I think that we live in a structure of violence in our planet, and we need to switch consciousness. So this is a most important point, the subjective reframing, transforming the learning, and by extension, transforming the society. This research, as I mentioned, I have done it in Venezuela from 2015 to 2021. And it is divided in two parts. Part number one is an ethnography to understand a generation of students from 17 years old to 25 years old, born under a dictatorship, born under a structure of violence. This group is 1,500 Venezuelan media students, and the information collected was used to develop a strategy of education to help these students to move from that structure of violence into a constructive view of the word activism. The collection was through interviews, focus group, photographs, videos, and observations conducted at two different university or educational institutions. One, it was a media film kind of technical school with students low income students, and the other one, the Catholic University Andres Bello, with a population of 1,500 students, um, 15,000 students, sorry, with different socioeconomic levels. And then a collection of testimonials well, from 30 students after um, all this strategy was implemented. And this is the point, the embodiment of violence and the implications in the learning disposition. The living conditions of most of Venezuelan students do not meet the minimum levels of consumption for basic needs such as food, water, clothing, shelter, security, and health care. So, like the research question is, how do you teach these human beings? How do you make them go from a violent state of mind into a constructive state of mind? And that's it has been the biggest challenge through all these years, and the way analyzing how to implement education for this community. And this is an important point here. It is like this quote, anthropology of violence, how violence works, and it is a very difficult concept because it goes everywhere. It is in every single thing that we do daily. And if we talk about sustainable development, the destruction that we see in our planet is caused by this violence, and we don't even notice that we are being part of this violence. So what I did here from my research of a group of anthropologists who study violence, I divided like the social and cultural dimensions of violence. And usually when we talk about violence, we talk about this tip of the iceberg. We think violence is the physical, it is like death. However, like this visible violence, which is physicality, force, assault to the that inflicts pain, is the most the small in the whole structure of what violence is. The invisible violence is the more powerful, the one who destroy the most. And this is the assault on the personhood, the dignity, the sense of worth, and the value of the victim. And that becomes the structural violence. Hunger is structural violence. Not having internet is structural violence. And how this violence keeps uh, building underneath of the society and the culture, and it becomes normalized, becomes symbolized, symbolic, and that violence starts causing syndemics, which is clusters of diseases in the communities. People start getting sick, and they don't notice that this invisible violence is causing this sickness. And finally, mental health of people who live under structural violence. This a constant stress. It starts forcing people to get mental health. And in this next slide, I have a quote from one of my students. And if we saw that iceberg, you can see the iceberg in all what this student is mentioning. And actually, the tip of the iceberg now is in the bottom. And but you can see how students go to, and I'm talking about students, but also professors. We are having the same problems, exactly the same problems that students are facing. We do this labor by vocation, because we think that if we don't do it, the country is gonna disappear. So, although that we are living with hunger, we go to school to form these human beings. So you can see like people going to school without eating, but also like how the violence starts becoming reproduced by the same students. Some students become violent and they don't notice that they are being violent. They're just reproducing like those spirals of violence. And in the bottom, like in 2017, we have this protests from the students, and many of them died in the streets of Caracas, Venezuela, fighting for freedom. So you can see all the structural violence represented in this quote. And now, how do you change? How do you switch from darkness without fighting with more darkness, with love? So this is what I am proposing, this design, educational design, that I have been doing for 5 years, 6 years, trying to work with the students and switch, reframe their state of mind, transform those human beings to become active agents of democracy and sustainable development. And from the theory, one of the most powerful quotes here are related to transformative learning, the full development of the human potential. Not only talking about a subject, a content, but teaching civic engagement, freedom, equality, tolerance, social justice, responsibility. And these are like the concepts that I became the basis for designing this strategy that I am gonna be presenting next. In this strategy, the implementation, I divided in four different courses on groups. The number one is the transmedia journalism and human rights, which students work with high impact projects, reframing reality with the course of documentary and visual anthropology, multicultural collaboration with COIL. COIL projects are important because they help to reframe the mind. They give students another point of view of how students from different parts of the world are facing the realities, and that helps them to have a more positive view of the world, because they think they figure out that not everything is negative. And the most important, and this is what where I have had the best results in this work, is the healing power of nature, taking the students out to the woods, taking them to the mountains, working ecotourism projects, and that has helped the most in this strategy. And again, this is finding solutions for the 17 sustainable development goals that we're talking in this Congress. And basically, in these courses, especially in the journalism, students start working on projects related with human rights and sustainable development goals, and they start producing media content and sharing that media content with the world. They put it on the social media, in the internet, in YouTube, to share that knowledge that they learn. They learn about, again, we are going to be detailing very briefly here how they start talking about the researching about human rights, and they share this collaboration, this knowledge with people. And during this process, They work in teams, and they are organized under the Bloom's taxonomy. And you can see it here. The number one, they remember the learners study and research about the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and the SDGs from the Agenda 2030. They understand, they study and select specific items from both declarations. They apply, they start uh, uh, creating a proposal for a communication strategy. So they start applying that knowledge to design a strategy. They analyze, they conduct a survey with the potential audience to understand their needs and context. They evaluate, they analyze this audience report, and they start building the strategy. They design, they start developing the strategy. They create infographics about the communication strategy, and finally, they produce the content and they engage the audience to get to teach human beings about human rights and SDGs. And this video that I'm going to share with you, it is one of the production of the students was made in 2017 during the protest. The human right they choose to work was freedom of information, and the SDG was about the jobs, about the jobs with dignity, and they based it on the journalists that were covering the protests in the country and how they were facing all kind of violations from the government. So I'm gonna put some parts of the video very briefly because we're short with time. And but just to give you an idea of the productions that students do during the semester, and this is explaining how that 2017 was a very hard year, and how journalists went out to cover the protests, and they started getting the reaction from the government and hurting them. And one of the important things that I have to mention here is that the student who did this video, he was working for a media outlet, and during this time, he got taken by the government to the jail, and it was a very traumatic experience. And they mentioned about that. So these are the Venezuelan journalists talking about how they suffered all kind of violations from the government during that year. So I wanted just to briefly show you this video. You can see it in YouTube. We can pass the link, but it was just an idea of the productions that students do during the courses talking about human rights and SDGs. And I think there was hold on, this was okay. Um, this getting at the end of the presentation, the results, how their views change, how they start taking responsibility for their lives. And again, as I mentioned, the ecotourism part, the contact with nature, was the most powerful element in all this process. Students really, you can see in this quote from one of the students how the contact with nature foster that sense of community, that sense of collaboration, that transform their way of thinking. So combining the study of the human rights, the SDGs, producing material for the public, and working on in the nature, that combination resulted on a transformation of the students, their point of views. And finally, you can see how they, in the different levels, they switch from a victimization view into an active citizens transforming reality. Now, I want to hear you. I want to hear some questions if we have time, because this is the most important part, listening to you and responding to your questions. So I was trying to leave I don't know if I was able to leave. Can you see me? Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, we can see you now, Jose Luis. You're no longer sharing your screen. And we have time. We're not going to be able to hear voices, but we very much encourage you to submit your questions, either use the Q&A function or the chat. We'll be watching both. I think, I don't think there's the ability for anyone to unmute and speak. If you find you have it, we'd love to hear
Well,
from
in
you.
the meantime, just to keep dynamic the process. But Sally, if you want to make any comment, and we can dialogue, and at that time we encourage some answers from people. That will be wonderful, because we have spoken about this. So if you have any comments or any questions, that will help the process.
Jose Luis, you and I had the privilege of working with you last week when we were sort of preparing for today's session. And I'll admit it, I was brought to tears talking to you, so moved by the beautiful and transformative work that you do. And I think what hits me hardest, the greatest impact that your work has on me, Jose Luis, is that I see it, you are working in circumstances where so many people, maybe most people, would really become disheartened. And they would say, how can I teach the next generation about journalism at a time when journalists are suffering violence in the streets? And instead of becoming disheartened, you've become heartened. And you have turned that very violence into the object of education and learning. And you've allowed those students the opportunity to really dig deep and understand their life circumstances and the challenges they have ahead of them. So I admire your ability to do this when, as you said, you yourself and your faculty colleagues, you're living through the same structural violence that everyone is. You have to get up every morning and figure out how to get through the day. And Jose Luis, last night when we had our session on zero hunger, and we were talking about, the unlikelihood that people in a gathering like this might be going to bed hungry. Thank you for pointing out to us that that's not necessarily the case. You reminded us, I will go to bed hungry. I live in Venezuela, where that is one of the acts of violence that's committed upon us. And we all found that really sobering. And we, as Arturo Condo said, we feel solidarity with you and the people of Venezuela.
Well, thank you. I want to mention something. It is not easy. It is not easy because um, every day you feel that violence. But I mentioned to you last week about Martin Luther King, and how a human being got to the point to understand that violence was not the solution. And this is my greatest inspire. It is like, but it is a dip, because like every night you get frustrated and you want to respond with more violence. So you have to meditate every day This is a spiritual task. It is not easy. It is every day. I mentioned to you, like I mentioned to the students, is like charging your cellular. The battery is going out every day, and every day you need to charge it, and get into your mind that there is a solution, that there is a light outside of the tunnel, and you have to keep positive, and you have to keep those students positive, and it is not easy. I don't want to make this like poetic. It is not poetic. It is not poetic. This is an anthropological work, so you are studying human beings, and sometimes the same students are very violent too. They are living that violence. You have to deal with that. There are some that they're really, really victims, but some that can turn very mean. So this is not poetic. This is work. It is understanding. But if we're talking about SDGs and how we solve hunger, how we solve inequalities, and we have to be really committed. This is not superficial. This is not for. This is not a trend. This is very real, and we have to work very hard on this. We have to have that vocation, but again, understanding deeply inside of you from the point of view of love, as we mentioned the other day, for transforming. It is switching consciousness, but we have to switch ourselves first, and it's not easy. It is a lot of work. It is daily work.
As you started us off with the Martin Luther King quote, only love is the only force capable of transforming an enemy into a friend. Darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that. I wanted to share with you, Jose Luis, from the chat. Hope Wendell is here with us, and she is focused on how inspiring it is that the students find ecotourism as a beacon of hope. Can you talk a little bit about the importance of introducing those opportunities to students to convene in nature?
Yes, yes. Well, that's how I started as a young man. When I was studying, I have a passion for nature, a passion for birds. So I was leading bird watching tours in the rainforest in Venezuela when I was studying, and I started working with people from all over the world, and especially older people, and it was beautiful to work with those. And one person told me once that I had the bliss to show the beauty of nature to wilted eyes, and that was beautiful. That kept on my heart for the rest of my life. So when I got back to Venezuela after 20 years living in the United States, I started going to the classroom and finding these students so depressed, so violent. And I said, they need to go to nature. They need to go out. So I started taking them out, and I started seeing how that was impacting them. The power of nature, the healing power of nature, how they were explore their bodies. We were all together under the sun, and also because I love Greek culture, and universities started that way. They started walking the peripatetics. I think it's the English word, peripatetics, and that was the way of teaching. It was not a classroom. It was walking in the park and talking, but also you are exercising your body. You are getting more oxygen to your brain. You are getting vitamin D. I mean, it's more complex than you think. It's not just seeing a flower, but it is all because we are complex systems, and we need to be reconnected with the complex system that nature is. And that's one of the biggest things about the climate change. We have been disconnected from that.
Wow, absolutely. Absolutely, Jose Luis. Hope also mentions that you make $20 a month as a professor. That strikes us as a great form of violence that doesn't allow people to buy food.
Not for a week.
A month, right?
Yes, but you don't have enough for a week.
No, that you don't have enough to buy food for a week.
Well, I love hope. I just want to send because hope it has become my mentor, and hope has become my hope in life. Uh, she is a great. Let's talk about COIL and the virtual exchange and how that is a very powerful tool to make change in this planet. How human beings can get together, brains can get together to plan, to design strategies to get out of this chaos that we are living. So I have a great admiration for Hope, and I'm very glad she's here.
She says it's a mutual admiration. Jose Luis, I would love to hear you talk a little bit more about, um, here at SUNY, I'm from the State University of New York. We do a lot of work with collaborative online international learning, and Hope is a really vital member of our team. I would love to hear you talk about how COIL fits into the work that you do. What are what is the impact that you observe in your students of doing virtual exchange?
Yes, number one, I do collaborations with SUNY Albany. Ilka Kresner is my partner in your university. So I started doing COIL with you and with Ilka. And since I started, I always say it is a frame of reference. I mean, these students are depressed. They think that there is no hope in life, and when they start working with American students, they see that there is hope, that there is other ways of doing things, and there is a big transformation. We have the greatest results. Number one, we have students from these collaborations that are going to present. They have been the last year they present at IVET conference, and they produce a video. We can share that video about their experience in Venezuela. So after doing a collaboration, they get so inspired that they keep going, and they keep working. The same students that did that video last year, we got contact to write a chapter for a book. So they work a whole year writing. So this for their professional lives, starting their professional lives, going to a conference and then publishing a book is really, really important. And after 2 years of the collaboration, they decide to get together again to go to this year's IBEC presentation.
For
So
those who don't know, that stands for International Virtual Exchange Conference.
thank you. Thank you. So they decide to create their own COIL without professors to go to a second year to a conference. We have one student also in the SUNY system that he's doing a internship right now. So professionally, they're getting placed in different places. They're publishing, so it is a total transformation of their point of view of a negative word to start doing and producing and moving forward with their careers. So it is a very strong impact that COIL is producing in our students.
Are those SDG related projects, the ones that you're
Yes.
doing with the COIL methodology? What is the SDG focus? Can you talk about that?
Well, the ones who have gone to the IVA conference is education, innovation in education. That's the title is uh, uh, uh,
So SDG 4,
yeah,
education.
it's SDG 4. Now we have one with South Africa with a lawyer professor, two lawyer professors, and they are working on gender equality. So they are working on the rights of women under the COVID labor rights of women under the COVID pandemic, and they're doing a very powerful research. These are some of the examples. But when I started doing the coordination of the COIL projects, one of the things that I started doing, any training that I do for the professors, is that we are going to do high impact projects based on the SDGs. So that's one of the important rules that I share with the COIL projects.
So your entire COIL portfolio there at Andres Bello, it's tied into the SDGs.
It is completely tied.
That's wonderful. That's really interesting.
Yeah. Every single collaboration has to select one or several and start working. It's like the point of encounter between different disciplines.
Right. It's a powerful framework for that interdisciplinary work, and focused on real world problems. Is there a high degree of awareness among faculty at your university of the SDGs, or are they learning about them through you?
They some of them, they don't connect with the Agenda 2030. It's new for them, but when you talk about sustainability, they know what it is. So I have to go over with them, especially with some courses in the humanities. I have to go over with them and explain them about the 17 goals and all of that. And once they get it, they really, I mean, it was only one professor who made resistance, and I don't know why he um, didn't get it, but the rest of the professors are working very well with that.
And the students, how do they receive them?
The students, they like them. They are more open minded, even that we have this. Problems in Venezuela. They are very open-minded, and a kind of the ecology is not the same as when I was their age. Things have changed a lot, and the new generations are more willing to work with climate change and all of that. A little less under like social problems, because like schools don't put too much emphasis on that, which we need to do it more in the humanities. People, when you talk about sustainability, they think only on climate change, but they get surprised when you talk about gender equality or you talk about hunger. So it is part of the educational process. You're educating the faculty and they educate the students.
It's so true. Jose Luis, we find the same thing, that when we talk about sustainability, so often people's minds go directly to sort of a green agenda, preserving the planet, preserving green spaces, and those are all important things. It goes to climate change, and of course that's absolutely critical. But there's a lot that goes into it, and the social aspects haven't gotten as much attention. That's what I personally appreciate so much about the Agenda 2030, is that it really weaves in all of all of the components that make up a sustainable future.
Yes, Very, very important. Very important. Again, like my life, I started my professional life in Washington with IUCN, working on national park and protected areas, and we were talking about sustainability like 30 years ago. But the social aspect, it was not completely integrated into that.
Mhm.
And this is the beauty that again, it is a complex system, and you have to work with all the different components, no isolating. Because again, like 30, 40 years ago, the conservation was not do not touch nature, do not get into nature. It was a different point of view, and now, but they were not considering the human aspect. Some were talking about the indigenous groups and how to integrate in the indigenous groups into that. Ecotourism, it was an important tool, but talking about gender equality, it was not in the dialogue.
Mhm, mhm. And health and making a decent living, right? Decent living wages and all of these aspects. And it's all intertwined. Well, we are coming close to the end of our session, Jose Luis, and I would encourage if anybody has any last minute thoughts or ideas to share in the chat. We'd love to hear from you. And we would love to hear from you, Jose Luis, any parting thoughts that you have for us, are there things that you'd like us to think about when we think about Venezuela and hold you in our thoughts?
Well, the one of the thing is again sometimes the dialogue or the narrative about sustainable development sometimes it goes light, and they don't take seriously what things are happening. And one of the frustrating things for Venezuelans is when the United Nations talk about Venezuela, they don't take it seriously. They again, because there is not an open war, and there is not the tip of the iceberg. When you see a lot of blood, they think that we are doing well, and that's the problem with the invisible violence. When you don't see the blood, you don't think that there is violence. And this is just like a study, but applies for everything, any community in the planet. It can be a rich city, but there are going to be human beings that because there is not blood, they think that they're living well. And that's probably one of the important messages is to tell people to pay attention on the structure of violence, and pay attention on the invisible violence. Invisible violence can be a word, it can be how I express towards something, that it could be part of invisible violence. And sometimes, and most of the times, we don't know that we are reproducing that violence. That's what I'm talking about, media students, because in the news, in the media, they can change society by being conscious how you represent women, how you represent minorities, what words do you use to represent them, because you could be reproducing violence and you don't notice it.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you, Jose Luis, for giving us so much to think about and so much to act upon. Um, I know that you are open to COIL partnerships, so I hope if there are those in the audience who want to reach out to Jose Luis, you can reach out to me, I can connect you, or if you have contact with me or to the UGC leadership, and we will find a way to connect you. Or you can connect on this platform on Hopin, there's a way as well.
Yes.
Jose Luis, thank you. Thank you for the remarkable work that you're doing. I can't think of anything more important you can be doing. One of our audience members says, thank you for what you do, very inspiring. Always choose love.
Always choose love. And it's not easy. You have to recharge your batteries every day.
We'll remember that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Gracias.
Bye.
Bye-bye.